came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh was dreaming, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. And behold, from the Nile were coming up 7 cows of handsome appearance and robust flesh, and they pastured in the marshland. Behold, 7 other cows were coming up after them from the Nile, of ugly appearance and lean of flesh, and they stood beside the cows which were on the Nile bank. And the cows of ugly appearance and lean of flesh devoured the 7 cows that were of handsome appearance and healthy. Then Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed again. And behold, 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, healthy and good. And behold, 7 ears of grain, thin and beaten by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy and full ears of grain. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, a dream. Now it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. So he sent and called all the necromancers of Egypt and all the sages, and Pharaoh related to them his dream. But no one interpreted them for Pharaoh. Now the chief cupbearer spoke with Pharaoh, saying, I call to mind my faults today. Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and he put me in prison in the house of the chief slaughterer, me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream on the same night, I and he, each one according to the interpretation of his dream we dreamed. And there with us was a Hebrew lad, a slave of the chief slaughterer, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. For each of us he interpreted according to his dream. And it came to pass that just as he had interpreted, so it was. Me he restored to my position, and him he hanged. So Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they rushed him from the dungeon, and he shaved and changed his clothes, and he then came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it, but I have heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret it. Joseph replied to Pharaoh, saying, Not I, God will give an answer that will bring peace to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream, behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows of robust flesh and handsome form were ascending from the Nile, and they pastured in the marshland. And behold, 7 other cows were ascending after them, emaciated and of very ugly form, and with meager flesh. I have not seen such ugly ones throughout the entire land of Egypt. And the meager and ugly cows devoured the first 7 healthy cows. And they went inside them, but it was not known that they had gone inside of them, for their appearance was as ugly as in the beginning. Then I awoke. Then I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears of grain, hardened, thin and beaten by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 good ears of grain. I told the necromancers, but no one tells me its meaning. Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dream is one. What God is doing, he has told Pharaoh. The 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 good ears of grain are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 meager and ugly cows coming up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears of grain beaten by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is this matter that I have spoken to Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he has shown Pharaoh. Behold, 7 years are coming, great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And 7 years of famine will arise after them, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will destroy the land. And the plenty will not be known because of that famine to follow, for it will be very severe. And concerning the repetition of the dream to Pharaoh, twice, that is, because the matter is ready to emanate from God, and God is hastening to execute it. So now let Pharaoh seek out an understanding and wise man, and appoint him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and appoint officials over the land, and prepare the land of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty. and let them collect all the food of these coming good years, and let them gather the grain under Pharaoh's hand, food in the cities, and keep it. Thus the food will remain as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not be destroyed by the famine. The matter pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. So Pharaoh said to his servants, "Will we find anyone like this, a man in whom there is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has let you know all this, there is no one as understanding and wise as you. You shall be appointed over my household, and through your command all my people shall be nourished. Only with the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Look, I have appointed you over the entire land of Egypt." Pharaoh removed his ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's hand. He attired him with raiment of fine linen, and he placed the golden chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the chariot of second rank, and they called out before him, "This is the king's patron," appointing him over the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and besides you no one may lift his hand or his foot in the entire land of Egypt." Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphenath Paneach, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the governor of On, for a wife, and Joseph went forth over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Joseph went out from before Pharaoh and passed through the entire land of Egypt. In the 7 years of plenty, the inhabitants of the land gathered food by handfuls. He collected all the food of the 7 years that were in the land of Egypt, and he placed food in the cities, the food of the field surrounding the city he put within it. Joseph gathered grain like the sand of the sea, in great abundance, until one stopped counting, because there was no number. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the year of the famine, said in whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the governor of On, bore to him. And Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for God has caused me to forget all my toil in all my father's house. And the second one he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty that were in the land of Egypt were finished, and the 7 years of famine began, as Joseph had said, and there was famine in all the lands. But throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. When the entire land of Egypt hungered, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. But Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph that he tells you do." Now the famine spread over all the face of the land, and Joseph opened all his storehouses, in which there was grain, and he sold it to the Egyptians, and the famine intensified in the land of Egypt. And all the inhabitants of the land came to Egypt to Joseph to purchase, for the famine had intensified in the entire land.